Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. So today we're talking about trad wives. So trad wives have kind of taken over the internet recently, and it's been quite interesting to watch because there are some people who are very like just super against them and have a huge problem with them. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't quite get it. So this was first brought to my attention on Twitter because there was a video going viral on Twitter of this blonde woman who was just casually cooking in her kitchen and stuff, and there was people saying all sorts of really interesting things about that video. And so I wanted to understand it, I wanted to understand why people have such a big issue with the concept of a trad wife. But because this trend is happening on TikTok, I thought it'd be interesting to have a look on TikTok in regards to trad wives. First of all, to understand exactly what a trad wife is, because I have a kind of an understanding of what it is, but I thought it'd be interesting to actually see like a trad wife explain what a trad wife is.
Okay, so I'm here to make a clarification video because of the big controversy going around about the term trad wife and the intent behind the term, as well as the intent behind my channel and what I post. If you are not familiar with the term trad wife, it is a woman who chooses to live a more traditional life with ultra-traditional gender roles. So the man goes outside the house, works, provides for the family. The woman stays home and she's the homemaker. She takes care of the home and the children if there are any. The misconception about the trad wife movement, it's not really a movement. Nobody's pushing it. People are typically just living it and maybe showcasing their lifestyle like me. And we believe our place, specifically us as individuals, believe our purpose is to be homemakers. It doesn't mean that we are trying to take away what women fought for. There are a lot of people trying to make this a sinister thing or put some other darker meaning behind the term trad wife. Nobody is doing that. No trad wife TikTokers are saying every woman's place is in their home. We as individuals are just choosing to be homemakers. That's all.
Okay, so a trad wife is kind of what I thought it was, just a woman who's choosing to live a traditional lifestyle with her husband in terms of having traditional gender roles. So I completely understand now why this has caused so much uproar. Oh dear God. Okay, so I guess let's see some of the reactions to the trad wife.
The term trad wife, it is a woman who chooses to live a more traditional life with...
So choices don't exist in a vacuum. When you make a choice, you're making a choice in a social and a political context, and your choices have consequences for other people, and there are good choices and bad choices. Not every choice a woman makes is going to be necessarily liberating, particularly when we live in a society that constrains women's choice so much. In fact, most things are determined by our social and political context. Very little of what we do is in fact a choice. One of the slogans in second wave feminism was "the personal is political." And that's been used to mean many things that it wasn't originally intended. But the original intention behind "the personal is political" is to critically examine the choices we make and critically examine the constraints we have on those choices. It's not a surprise that women are finding the trad wife lifestyle appealing right now, in a time where women are so hypersexualized, when we have this toxic hookup culture, when most men are consuming very violent pornography. Just going, "oh, it's a choice," shuts down all critical examination of any of those factors. And maybe you have this lifestyle and you have a nice life. I don't know you. But the fact is, giving your full material security over to a man is a very dangerous choice for many women and children.
I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of the person is political people. Not a fan. Not a fan. Those are usually the people who politicize absolutely everything and anything, because of course if you believe the person is political, then that means all of your opinions are political, all of your decisions are political, everything is political, and I'm not a fan of how much we've politicized everything. It's very annoying. Now, in regards to what she said, I do agree with her that not everything you do exists in a vacuum. Certain decisions that you make do definitely influence other people and do have an effect on greater society as a whole. Now, I understand that there is an argument that that if your husband is the primary provider and the primary breadwinner, then there is an increased chance of you being taken advantage of or abused. So I decided to have a deeper look to see if your employment status has any effect on your risk of experiencing domestic violence. And what I actually found was quite interesting. So according to Gov UK, people who are unemployed experience much higher rates of domestic violence. Now, at first I thought that this was confirmation that if you are dependent on your husband financially, then you are going to increase your risk of domestic abuse. However, I then learned that housewives are not considered unemployed. They are considered economically inactive. And Gov UK states that people who are economically inactive actually experience less rates of domestic abuse than people who are employed. What was also interesting to see were the reports on a study that found that women who out-earned their male partners and contributed more than 50% towards the household income were more likely to experience domestic abuse than women who contributed 50% or less. Now, I completely agree about warning women about the potential dangers of being fully financially dependent on a bad partner. However, I very much disagree with framing domestic abuse as something that is inevitable or highly likely because a woman chooses to be a housewife. I think we all understand that there are abusive men out there. However, the vast majority of housewives are not being abused, and your risk of being abused does not increase just because you choose to be a housewife. I also think these ideas portray a very bleak idea about men. While there are, of course, some very terrible men out there who definitely do abuse their power and do abuse their control, I do think that for the vast majority of men, they just genuinely want to provide for their family.
I've been seeing a lot about this trend of trad wives. I've got nothing against women who want to have children. I have nothing against women who want to stay home, who want to defer responsibility to their husband. When it's a choice, no problem. But when it's expected, when it's given to you from on high by some authority, a culture, a church, a partner, a family, that's when it's a problem. When you're saying trad wife is the only option, or even that it's the best option, might be the best option for you. The minute you make it about what's best for everyone, you are taking people's sovereignty away. And be careful, because the trick, the harm, the danger, is it for it to swing completely the other way and say, well, that's not good for anyone. No, sovereignty means you have the right to define yourself, to choose yourself, to own yourself. And if you are going to be sovereign and give yourself, you want to sovereignly choose to give yourself over to a family, a job, a military, a culture, a partnership, a role. You have that right. That's sovereignty. Don't tell me what to do with my feminine life, my womanly life, and I will not tell you what to do with yours. We're both going to be sovereign, then we must both be sovereign and respect each other's personal, individual choices. That's sovereignty.
I mean, I disagree with the first point that she made when she said if you want to defer responsibility onto someone else, because I don't believe that trad wives are necessarily relinquishing themselves of responsibilities. I think that they are simply, rather than trying to do a 50-50 split where both the husband and the wife are both doing the same jobs and splitting it in half, they're simply allocating roles within the relationship and saying, okay, so you're going to take care of the finances and I'm going to take care of the household. Because there's two main types of relationships, right? There's the partnership relationship where you both go to work, you both split chores, the more egalitarian type of partnership where everything is split. And then there's some relationships where you just allocate roles. This is your role in the relationship, this is my role within the relationship. But in regards to the rest of what she said, I actually 100% agree with her. I don't think that the trad wife lifestyle is for everybody, and I don't think that it should be enforced as a universal rule that all women should abide by. But I also disagree with the idea of pushing careers onto women as a one-size-fits-all. I think ultimately, as we all know, people are different, and what makes people happy is going to look different depending on the person. Because what's liberating to you might not be liberating to me, and what's liberating to me might not be liberating to you. So why do I get the authority on what is liberating, and why do you get the authority on what is liberating? I think it's fair to say that there are going to be some decisions that are going to benefit some women, but those same decisions could be very detrimental to another. And so I think when you have feminists like this on TikTok condemning trad wives and encouraging them to pick the lifestyle that they approve of, this is an example of that one-size-fits-all feminism. Just because you think that their choices are not empowering doesn't mean that they're not empowering, because they find it empowering, and what you find empowering, they don't find empowering. So where do we go from here?
Would you swap your current life to live like a 1950s housewife? Well, one scroll through TikTok and you'll find the women who have said yes. and they call themselves trad wives. A trad wife is a
woman who chooses to live a more traditional life with ultra-traditional gender roles.
Hashtag tradwife has 130.9 million views on TikTok, and the movement nods to the housewives of the 1950s. Women are encouraged to enjoy traditional domestic duties while being feminine and submitting to their husbands. Obviously, like all internet subcultures, this is layered. The first layer: feminism. Feminists have criticised the movement for turning back the clock on women's rights. But tradwives argue that feminism is the reason that women walked away from these roles in the first place. But some professors are saying it's not just a backlash against feminism, but a reflection of the wider insecurity of our time. The second layer: could tradwives be a product of a post-COVID era? They show off their lifestyles as an alternative to hustle culture, burnout, and career women. Stats from the pandemic shone a light on women experiencing burnout more than men, largely because of the unpaid domestic work they do on top of their actual paid jobs. Layer 3. Some sociologists instead argue that, particularly in the US, tradwives are a product of a changing political landscape. There's even a split within the tradwife community. Some promote old-fashioned domesticity, whereas others push ultra-conservatism. UK tradwives claim to have no association with this side of the community. Alina Kate Pettit, a British tradwife, explicitly claims that tradwives are inclusive and are categorically not white supremacists. So whilst on the surface tradwives seem to hark back to an older age, perhaps they're actually a contemporary reaction to modern problems.
I would agree with that, actually. I do think that the trad wife trend is to some degree a response to modernity. I think that there are some women who are simply rejecting some of the new norms that are being pushed within Western culture in terms of what a woman is expected to be and how a woman is expected to behave and what she's expected to do. It just doesn't appeal to them, I guess. And so they prefer the more traditional life, and they prefer what comes with that, and they prefer that kind of way of doing things. I put up a tweet about this, and I said, it's interesting how when a woman is choosing to stay home and look after her children, etc., people can't seem to respect or acknowledge that as work. But if a woman was to do the exact same thing but be paid for it by an employer, then people could acknowledge it as work. So if I decided to be a nanny for another family, people could respect that as me working. But if I choose to stay at home and look after my own children, then people can't acknowledge and respect that as work. Yeah, I just don't think that stay-at-home parents really get the adequate amount of recognition. I do think people do just kind of like dismiss them really and just kind of look down on them. But I do genuinely think if you asked a lot of working mothers if they had the choice to give up their jobs and be full-time at home with their kids, I think a lot of them would say that they would choose that. I think a lot of them would happily take that choice, but they can't afford to, because this is quite a privileged lifestyle to be able to have. This is very much for the people who can afford to live on one income. But overall, in regards to tradwife lifestyle, I do think some of the criticisms of it seem to me to be very based on fear. I think there are a lot of women who are very, very scared about the reality of being financially dependent on a man. I think that they think of the worst case scenarios in terms of what the outcomes of making that decision will look like. And while I understand it, I don't think it's representative for the vast majority of families who choose to live this lifestyle. I think that most husbands love their wives and kids and are happy to provide and take care of them and don't desire to hurt them or to take advantage of them or to treat them terribly. So I do think it's unfair to paint this idea that if you choose to have this lifestyle, that is inevitably going to be your fate, when for the vast majority of women that won't be the case. In regards to the people who don't want the trad lifestyle, I don't see the problem with that too. You know, live and let live. If it doesn't apply to you, it doesn't work for you, don't do it. But the idea of like being so hostile towards the women who do choose to do it, I don't quite understand it. Like I don't get it. Their lifestyles on social media though are very aesthetically pleasing. I don't think the average stay-at-home housewife, her day looks that glamorous and she's having chai lattes and, you know, all this kind of stuff. I don't think the average stay-at-home woman's day looks like that. I think it's a lot more chaotic. But that's just my views on the tradwives. Do let me know what your personal views are on the tradwife trend that's going on at the moment. I would love to know what your personal thoughts are on it, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it, whether you just don't care. If you enjoyed this video, then do like and subscribe. I am also on other socials if you'd like to check me out. And I do also make music. Some of you have gotten on my case about the fact that I haven't released new music. I saw a comment where someone was like, Patience, I've been playing the same songs over and over again. When are you going to release new music? I'm thinking, right, it's either release singles or just drop an EP. And I think I would rather just like drop an EP like once a year or maybe twice a year or something. So I do intend to be releasing an EP. I would definitely announce it when it does happen. But I hear your feedback, and it's fair feedback. But if you do want to check out the music that I do currently have, then do check me out on Spotify. I will put links to all of this in my description box. Thank you very, very much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.